Have you ever promised yourself you'd stop a bad habit only to find yourself doing it again the next day? You're not lazy, weak, or broken. Habits are tricky because they feed on how your mind reacts to stress, boredom, or frustration, and most people don't even notice what's really happening. This video will show you exactly how to catch the moment your habit starts, face the feelings it hides, and make a choice that actually works. You'll learn practical steps to take control of your urges, strengthen your self-discipline, and create small daily actions that completely change your behavior. By the end, you won't just understand why habits control you, you'll know how to break them, take charge of your decisions, and start living the life you've been promising yourself. This is about real change, not temporary fixes. It's about taking one simple step today that moves you closer to the person you really want to be. Chapter 1. Understand why your habit comforts you and choose real change. You stand here today with a habit that has been part of your life for a long time. It may give you a sense of comfort. It may help you avoid a feeling you do not want to face. It may give you a break from pressure. It may help you escape a fear or memory. It may help you feel in control for a moment. It may calm your mind when your day feels heavy. And that is the first truth you need to understand. A bad habit is not always loud. Sometimes it is the quiet friend that keeps you stuck. Sometimes it feels like the only thing that does not judge you. Sometimes it feels like the easiest way to disappear from a stressful moment. That is why it stays. That is why it feels safe. Many people think a bad habit continues because we are weak. That is not true. A bad habit continues because it fills an emotional gap. It gives something that your mind wants. It gives you comfort without effort. It gives you a quick sense of ease. It gives you a break from responsibility, and your mind remembers that feeling. Your mind likes anything that removes stress fast. That is its nature. Your mind protects you. It tries to reduce discomfort, but sometimes the method it chooses harms you more than it helps you. Every person has a habit they want to change. Some eat to calm anxiety. Some scroll on their phone to avoid thinking about their future. Some stay awake late at night to avoid facing a day they do not enjoy. Some shout when they feel unheard. Some avoid difficult tasks because failure scares them. Some repeat the same mistake because the familiar feels safer than the unknown. When you understand this, you begin to see your habit in a different way. You begin to see that the habit is not the real problem. The real problem is the emotion that hides under it. When a habit comforts you, it becomes a shield you use to avoid facing something inside you. Maybe it is stress from work. Maybe it is loneliness. Maybe it is fear of not being enough. Maybe it is disappointment with yourself. Maybe it is old pain you never healed. Whatever it is, the habit steps in and says, do this instead. So you do it, and you feel relief. But that relief does not solve anything. It only covers the feeling. And once the relief fades, the deeper emotion returns. Then the habit calls again. And the cycle continues. So to break a habit, you must first understand what it protects you from. Ask yourself what you feel right before the habit appears. Do you feel empty? Do you feel pressured? Do you feel ignored? Do you feel bored? Do you feel stressed? Do you feel insecure? Do you feel restless? Do you feel misunderstood? The moment you discover that feeling, you discover the core of your habit. This discovery is where real change begins. You do not change a habit by fighting it. You change it by understanding it. When you understand the emotional reward the habit gives you, you gain control over it. Your habit comforts you because it gives you something you believe you cannot give yourself. You may think you need it to stay calm. You may think you need it to stay calm. You may think you need it to feel secure. You may think you need it to distract yourself from pain. But you are far stronger than that. You can give yourself comfort in ways that build your life instead of breaking it. You can create new actions that support your growth. You can build a stronger mind. You can face the emotion directly. You can remind yourself that you are not trapped. And every time you understand your habit more clearly, its power over you weakens. Change becomes possible the moment you decide to stop accepting temporary comfort in exchange for lifelong struggle. Real change begins when you say to yourself, "I deserve better than this cycle." That decision is not loud. It is quiet and steady. It starts inside your mind. It begins when you choose honesty over avoidance. It begins when you stop lying to yourself about why you return to the habit. It begins when you admit that the habit no longer helps you. It begins when you choose truth. Truth is powerful because it removes excuses. When you know why you hold on to the habit, you can build a new response. You can face the emotion instead of running from it. You can create a healthier behavior that gives you comfort without destroying your confidence. You can give yourself space to breathe. You can talk to someone you trust. You can walk outside and release tension. You can drink water and slow down your racing thoughts. You can take a break without falling into the same old pattern. You can speak kindly to yourself. You can create a routine that gives your mind structure. These actions seem small, but they change the way you deal with discomfort. Every habit has a moment when it begins, a moment when your mind says, "Do the old thing," and that moment is your chance. That moment is the point where you can choose real change. You may not win every time. You may slip. You may fail. You may fall back into the habit. That does not mean you cannot change. It only means you are human, and humans learn through repetition. You will get stronger each time you choose a new action. You will get clearer each time you pause before reacting. You will get more confident each time you refuse to return to the old pattern. Change is built through daily choices, not perfect days, not perfect plans. Daily choices. Many people wait for motivation to break a habit, but motivation fades. What stays is responsibility. You must take responsibility for your growth. You must take responsibility for your choices. You must take responsibility for your future. Your life begins to change when you say, "I am done choosing temporary comfort. I am ready for real growth." That is when you shift from surviving to building. That is when you stop negotiating with your excuses. That is when you stop giving power to a habit that has controlled you for years. You want a simple way to break a bad habit. Here is the truth. The simple way is to understand why it comforts you and choose a better path every single day. It is simple because the steps are clear. It is simple because the strategy is direct. Understand the emotion. Face the emotion. Replace the behavior. Stay consistent. But even if it is simple, it is not always easy. Your mind is used to the old routine. It will try to pull you back. It will remind you of the comfort. It will signal the same urge. But you are not the same person anymore. You are conscious now. You are aware. You are choosing change. You will feel discomfort in the beginning. You will feel the urge rising. You will feel the habit calling. But that feeling is not a threat. It is a sign that you are taking back your life. And the more you choose the new action, the more the old habit fades. Your brain learns through repetition. Each time you choose differently, your mind shifts. Each time you stay strong, your belief grows. Each time you trust yourself, your confidence expands. And soon the habit that once controlled you becomes weaker, smaller, and easier to step away from. When you understand your habit deeply, you gain a level of strength most people never reach. You understand your triggers. You understand your emotions. You understand your patterns. And that understanding helps you create a better life. A life where you choose your action. A life where you use your time wisely. A life where you handle stress with maturity. A life where you feel proud of your decisions. A life where discipline becomes natural. A life where you trust yourself again. You deserve that life. You deserve to evolve. You deserve to feel proud of your choices. You deserve to break anything that holds you back. And all of that begins with one decision. The decision to understand yourself honestly and choose real change. Real change starts with you. It starts with the truth you face. It starts with the commitment you make. It starts with the courage you show when the habit pulls you back. And it grows stronger every time you choose your future over your past. Chapter 2. Ask yourself what you avoid and face it today. You wake up every day carrying something inside you that you try not to look at. It could be a fear. It could be a responsibility you keep pushing away. It could be a memory that still bothers you. It could be a task that demands effort. It could be a truth about yourself that makes you uncomfortable. Every person avoids something. Every person has an area of life where they hesitate. And this avoidance becomes the quiet fuel that keeps a bad habit alive. When you avoid something, your mind tries to distract you. It looks for the easiest escape. That escape becomes the habit you are trying to break. Your mind looks for the fastest relief when life feels heavy. And the moment you avoid what you should face, you give your habit the perfect place to grow. That is why understanding avoidance is one of the most important steps in personal change. If you do not face what you avoid, you will continue falling into the same behavior even when you know it hurts you. You cannot break a habit while running from the real problem. You need to stand still and face the emotion or task that hides behind the habit. When you ask yourself what you avoid, you begin to see the truth about your daily choices. Maybe you avoid difficult conversations because you fear judgment. Maybe you avoid work because you fear failure. Maybe you avoid rest because you fear being alone with your thoughts. Maybe you avoid change because you fear losing control. Maybe you avoid responsibility because it reminds you of your past mistakes. Whatever it is, avoidance builds a wall between you and growth, and that wall becomes thicker each time you choose comfort over action. Many people suffer for years because they never ask themselves a simple question: what am I avoiding? This question alone can open the door to massive transformation. When you ask it honestly, without trying to defend yourself, you begin to see where your life has stopped moving. You begin to understand why you stay stuck in the same cycle. You begin to realize that the habit you want to break is not random. It has a purpose. It fills the space created by avoidance. Avoidance steals your energy. It makes your mind restless. It weakens your confidence. It takes away your ability to trust yourself. And the longer you avoid something, the heavier it becomes. The mind remembers everything you run from. It does not forget, stores it. And that stored pressure grows into anxiety. Anxiety grows into distraction. Distraction turns into habits, and those habits take control of your day. But when you face what you avoid, something powerful happens. Your mind becomes calmer. You stop feeling chased. You stop feeling behind. You stop feeling powerless. You stop feeling trapped inside your thoughts. Avoidance creates chaos. Facing what you avoid creates clarity, and clarity gives you the strength to make better choices. People often think facing something means doing something big. That is not true. Facing something means acknowledging it. It means no longer pretending that the problem does not exist. It means allowing yourself to feel the discomfort instead of hiding from it. When you take one honest step toward the thing you avoid, it loses some of its power. A difficult task becomes manageable. A fear becomes understandable. A wound becomes something you can heal. A responsibility becomes something you can handle. Ask yourself what you avoid. Do it calmly. Do it with honesty. Do it without rushing. Think about the moments when your habit appears the most. Think about the days when you feel the urge. Think about the times when you feel blocked. There is always something underneath. It could be stress. It could be sadness. It could be disappointment. It could be frustration. It could be confusion about your future. It could be fear of making a mistake. These emotions often hide behind avoidance. Once you uncover them, you know where to begin. Facing what you avoid is not punishment. It is freedom. You free your mind from tension. You free your heart from old memories. You free yourself from the weight of unfinished responsibilities. You free your time from waste. You free your energy from fear. You free your belief from doubt. Every time you face something you avoided for years, you expand your ability to handle life. You become stronger. You become calmer. You become more stable. You become more disciplined. A habit cannot survive in a mind that faces the truth. A habit survives in the space created by avoidance. Remove the avoidance, and the habit begins to weaken. You begin to choose differently. You begin to think more clearly. You begin to feel more in control. That is how you break a habit from the inside. When you face something today, do not wait for the perfect moment. There is no perfect moment. There is only now. Face one small thing, one task, one emotion, one truth, one conversation, one decision. Large changes begin with small, honest actions. When you act today, you send a message to your mind that you are no longer running. You are showing yourself that you want growth. Many people avoid things because they fear the discomfort that comes with action. But discomfort is temporary. Avoidance is endless. Discomfort teaches you resilience. Avoidance teaches you hopelessness. Discomfort helps you grow. Avoidance keeps you stuck. Discomfort builds character. Avoidance builds fear. The stronger choice is often the uncomfortable one, but the uncomfortable one is also the one that builds you into a stronger person. Ask yourself what you avoid, and face it today. This is not advice for someone else. This is your life. This is your progress. This is your personal path to freedom. No one can face your fear for you. No one can take responsibility for your growth. No one can clean the parts of your life that you keep pushing away. Only you can do that. And when you do it, you create a future that feels lighter. Imagine how your life would feel if the things you avoid stopped hanging over you. Imagine waking up without that silent weight in your chest. Imagine going through your day without carrying an unfinished task in your mind. Imagine looking at yourself in the mirror and knowing you are no longer running. Imagine feeling capable instead of afraid. Imagine trusting yourself again. That is what happens when you face things instead of avoiding them. You unlock a version of yourself you have not met yet. A version that is stronger. A version that is clearer. A version that is more responsible. A version that is ready for life. You do not need to fix everything today. You only need to take responsibility for one thing. The thing you avoid the most usually carries the most power to change your life. Look at it, feel the discomfort, breathe through it, and take action. Even a small action counts. Even a small step matters. Once you take that step, you break the cycle of avoidance. And once the cycle breaks, your habit begins to loosen. People often say they want to feel stronger. They want confidence. They want self-respect. They want discipline. They want stability. These things do not come from comfort. They come from facing the truth. They come from doing what you avoid. They come from choosing action over fear. They come from taking responsibility for your own life. Growth does not come when everything feels easy. Growth comes when you face something that once scared you, and you rise above it. Growth comes when you stop hiding from your own life. Growth comes when you stop allowing fear to run your day. Growth comes when you look your challenges in the eye, and decide that you will not run anymore. When you ask yourself what you avoid and face it today, you change the entire direction of your life. You take back control. You take back your power. You take back your choices. You take back your time. You take back your mind. This is how real transformation begins. This is how you grow into the person you know you can be. This is how you lift yourself out of old patterns. This is how you break a habit that has held you down for years. You are not here to live in fear. You are not here to run from your own potential. You are not here to choose the easy path when the stronger path gives you a better life. You are here to grow. You are here to build. You are here to evolve. And that evolution begins the moment you stop avoiding what needs attention. Ask yourself what you avoid and face it. Today is the day you choose strength over fear. Today is the day you choose clarity over confusion. Today is the day you choose action over escape. Today is the day you take responsibility for your life. And once you take that step, everything begins to change. Chapter 3. Catch the first moment. Your habit calls your mind. There is a moment that happens before every habit you fall into. A moment that arrives silently. A moment that feels small. A moment that comes before any action. A moment most people ignore because they move too fast. This moment is the very beginning of the habit. It's the first signal your mind sends before you repeat the same behavior. If you can catch that moment, you can change the entire direction of your day. If you miss it, the habit takes over, and you fall back into the old pattern again. That moment is the doorway between the old you and the new you. Your habit does not begin when you do the action. It begins in your mind much earlier. It begins with a thought, a feeling, a tiny urge, a subtle pull. It begins with a small internal shift that says you need relief, or distraction, or comfort, or escape. Many people never notice this because it happens fast. But if you pay attention, you can catch it, and catching it is one of the most powerful skills you can ever build. When your mind sends that first signal, your body reacts. You may feel restless, you may feel bored, you may feel irritated, you may feel empty, you may feel pressured, you may feel pulled towards something that gives you quick comfort. This pull is the beginning of the habit, not the final action, not the moment your body moves. The beginning is inside your mind, and if you can meet that moment with awareness, you can stop the cycle before it starts. Many people think they lose control because the habit is stronger than them. That is not the truth. The real issue is that they react without noticing the early signs. They only realize what happened after the habit is already done. But by then, the mind has already followed the pattern it learned. To break a habit, you must interrupt the pattern at the very beginning. You must see the moment when the pattern wants to start. This is how you take back control of your behavior. The first moment your habit calls your mind is usually quiet. You won't hear a voice. You won't feel a shock. You won't get a warning. It shows up like a small shift in your thinking. It may sound like I need a break. It may sound like I don't care right now. It may sound like I'll do better later. It may sound like just this once. These short thoughts open the door to the habit. They are the first signs that your mind is preparing to go back to the familiar behavior. If you want real change, you need to slow down enough to catch those signs. Pay attention to the changes in your breathing. Pay attention to the tension in your shoulders. Pay attention to your restlessness. Pay attention to your desire to escape. Pay attention to how your mood shifts quickly. These are signals that your mind is preparing to slip into the old routine. The moment you notice them, you gain power. You gain choice. You gain control. When you catch the first moment, you interrupt the cycle before it becomes automatic. The habit loses the advantage because you are no longer acting unconsciously. You are no longer sleepwalking into your old behavior. You are awake. You are aware, and awareness gives you the ability to redirect yourself. The reason people fail to break habits is because they wait too long. They try to stop the habit in the middle of it. That is like trying to stop a car while driving at full speed. It's possible, but it is hard. The smarter approach is to stop the car while it's still slow. The earlier you catch the habit, the easier it is to change your direction. To catch the first moment your habit calls your mind, you need to understand what the early signs look like for you. Every habit has a pattern. Every person has a predictable response. The key is learning your own pattern. Think about the last times you fell into your habit. What were you thinking right before it happened? What were you feeling? What was happening around you? What did you want at that moment? Those moments are clues. They show you the trigger. They show you the emotional shift. They show you the mental cue that starts everything. Once you recognize the first signs, you can respond before the habit takes over. You can take a breath. You can pause your thoughts. You can walk to another room. You can drink water. You can stand up. You can stretch. You can remind yourself what you're working toward. You can choose a healthier action. You can break the momentum of the old pattern. This is how transformation begins. Catching the first moment won't feel natural at first. You will miss it sometime. You will catch it late. You will realize what happened only after the habit is finished. That is completely normal. You are learning a new skill. Awareness takes practice. But the more you practice, the more your mind sharpens. You begin to notice things faster. You begin to see the moment earlier, and eventually, you will catch it at the exact second it appears. When you catch the first moment, something else happens inside you. You start to trust yourself again. You begin to feel stronger. You begin to feel more in control. You start to believe in your ability to change. That belief shapes your future. That belief builds discipline. That belief becomes a foundation for the kind of life you want. There is a deep power in catching the first moment, because it shows you that your habit does not control you. You are the one who decides. You can break any habit when you understand how it begins. You can change any pattern when you understand how to interrupt it. You can rebuild any part of your life when you understand how your mind works. This process requires honesty. You must be willing to look at your urges without judging yourself. You must be willing to slow down your day enough to observe your thoughts. You must be willing to accept that your mind will try to pull you back into the familiar. You must be willing to understand that your habit grew from repetition. And breaking it requires a new kind of repetition. Repetition of awareness. Repetition of action. Repetition of choosing differently. When you catch the first moment, you also take responsibility for your mind. You stop blaming external factors. You stop blaming your environment. You stop blaming stress. You start realizing that the power to choose your behavior begins inside you. You take control where control matters most. You stand up for your growth. You tell yourself that you will no longer act without awareness. A habit is not stronger than you. It is only faster. And your job is to get ahead of it. Awareness is speed. Awareness is strength. Awareness is clarity. When you catch the moment early, you stop feeling helpless. You stop feeling stuck. You stop feeling confused. You begin to see the truth behind your behavior. You begin to see your mind as something you can guide. This is where personal power grows. Many people think they need huge motivation to break a habit. What they really need is early awareness. That single skill changes everything. It gives you the power to redirect your mind before your body follows. It gives you the power to make conscious choices. It gives you the power to cut the habit at its roots instead of fighting it at its strongest point. Catching the first moment also helps you discover the deeper emotions behind your urges. You begin to notice patterns that you never saw before. You notice that your habit calls your mind when you feel lonely. You notice it appears when you feel pressure. You notice it comes when you feel ignored. You notice it comes when you feel uncertain about your future. You notice it comes when you feel tired or overwhelmed. These emotional cues show you what your mind is trying to escape from. When you see these emotional triggers clearly,
You can address the real issue instead of falling back into the habit. You can give your mind the support it actually needs. You can calm yourself without harming your progress. You can deal with the emotion instead of running from it. You can choose action that builds your life instead of draining it. Learning to catch this moment changes your relationship with yourself. You become more patient. You become more observant. You become more understanding of your own thoughts. You begin to treat yourself with more kindness. You stop looking at your habit as a failure and start looking at it as information. Information about your mind. Information about your emotions. Information about what needs attention. The earlier you catch the moment, the more opportunities you have to grow. You can redirect your day. You can shift your mindset. You can break the automatic pattern. You can choose a path that supports the person you want to become. This is how deep change happens. This is how you break a habit from the inside out. This is how you build discipline that lasts. This is how you take ownership of your life. This is how you rise above your old identity and create a new one. You are not here to live under the control of urges. You are not here to follow patterns that drain your energy. You are not here to repeat the same behavior for the rest of your life. You are here to grow. You are here to evolve. You are here to take your power back. Catch the first moment your habit calls your mind. That moment is the key. That moment is the turning point. That moment is the chance to choose your future instead of repeating your past. And once you take hold of that moment, you become a stronger version of yourself, one decision at a time.
Chapter 4. Pause before reacting and give yourself a better choice. When you reach that moment where you usually react without thinking, that tiny space between impulse and action becomes the most powerful place in your entire day. Most people never notice that space. They jump straight from feeling something to doing something. That's how habits tighten their grip. But when you decide to pause, just for a breath, just for a second, you give yourself a chance to take back control. You create room for a better choice to appear, and that single moment can completely change the direction of your life. When a habit has been with you for a long time, it feels seasick. You feel a spark of stress, and your mind pushes you toward the same old behavior. It could be reaching for your phone, grabbing food you don't need, raising your voice, avoiding work, or slipping into something that steals your time. The moment shows up quietly, almost in the background, and it guides your hand before you even notice it. That's why the pause matters. The pause shines a light on something you usually do in the dark. When that impulse rises, your body sends signals. You may feel a pull in your chest, a tightness in your stomach, a rush in your mind, or a spike in your breathing. These physical reminders are not the problem. They're your early warning system. They tell you the habit is trying to take the wheel again. And in that exact second, if you stop and acknowledge what's happening, you interrupt the pattern. You remind yourself that you are not the habit. You're the one deciding what follows next. During that pause, you give yourself permission to question the urge instead of surrendering to it. You look at it and ask yourself what you truly want. You'll find that you don't want the habit. You want relief, comfort, control, peace, confidence, or progress. The habit has simply been the fastest, easiest doorway to those feelings. But it was never the best doorway. It just happened to be the one you kept walking through. The pause lets you pick a different door, one that doesn't rob your future for the sake of a moment's comfort. That small hesitation allows your thinking to catch up with your emotions. You begin to see the difference between what feels good right now and what helps you become who you want to be. That's how real change starts. Not with force, not with shame, not with guilt, just a second of awareness that gives you room to choose again. Even if you don't always choose correctly in the beginning, the pause trains your mind to slow down long enough to let your better self speak. You may think the pause needs to be dramatic or long, but it doesn't. A single breath can create more clarity than you imagine. In that breath, you can feel your body settle. You can feel your heartbeat slow. You can feel your thoughts separate from your reaction. It's in that calmer moment that you ask yourself if the habit you're about to follow actually serves you. Most of the time, the answer is clear, and even if the urge is strong, your awareness becomes stronger each time you interrupt the pattern. When you pause, remind yourself what your future looks like if you keep following the same habit. Picture the tired version of you, the frustrated version of you, not to scare yourself, but to remind yourself that every action is a vote for the kind of person you become. If you vote for the habit again, you reinforce the cycle. If you vote for the better choice, even once, you crack the cycle open. That better choice may feel unfamiliar, or boring, or slow, but it's the one that lifts you, not drains you. Sometimes the better choice is as simple as drinking water instead of reaching for something harmful. Sometimes it's stepping outside to breathe instead of repeating a reaction you'll regret. Sometimes it's opening the work you've been avoiding instead of scrolling. Sometimes it's staying silent in a heated moment, so you don't speak words that can't be taken back. Sometimes it's giving your mind a moment before you let your hands move. These tiny choices shape your days more than any big promise you make to yourself. The pause also gives you a chance to understand what you truly need in that moment. Maybe you're tired, maybe you're overwhelmed, maybe you're lonely, maybe your mind is tangled with thoughts you haven't addressed. When you react quickly, you cover these feelings with a habit that numbs them temporarily. But when you slow down, you hear what your emotions have been trying to tell you. You start to respond to your needs instead of escaping from them. That's where the real strength comes from. You may find that the habit appears faster on stressful days. That's normal. Stress shortens the space between impulse and action. But even then you can build the skill of catching the moment before you fall into the cycle. The more you practice pausing, the more familiar the process becomes. The urge loses some of its power, your decision-making becomes clearer, and eventually, choosing the better option feels less like a fight, and more like a natural step. Give yourself credit each time you pause. Even if the pause lasts 2 seconds, you have already done something powerful. You broke the automatic path. You proved to yourself that the habit is not stronger than you. You built discipline in real time. This is how people reshape their lives, not by flipping a switch, but by owning the small moments that used to own them. As you practice, you will begin to recognize the habit earlier. You will sense the pull before your body reacts. You will hear the quiet thought the habit uses to lure you in. You will see the pattern forming before it completes. This awareness gives you more opportunities to take the better path. Each time you do, your confidence rises. You start believing in your ability to change. You feel lighter because you're no longer controlled by something you once felt stuck inside. When you pause, you aren't losing time. You're gaining clarity. You're choosing strength over autopilot. You're proving to yourself that you value your life enough to think before you move. That one moment creates distance between the old version of you and the one you're building, and that distance keeps growing every time you choose a better response. Even if the habit has followed you for years, every day gives you new opportunities to interrupt it. Every day gives you a moment where the old path appears again. And in that moment, you get to decide whether you walk it or take a new road. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be aware. The pause makes the awareness possible. The awareness makes the choice possible. And the choice makes the change possible.
The important thing is not how many times you fall back into the habit, but how many times you choose to pause even when it feels easier not to. That pause may feel small, but it shapes your character more than you realize. It tells your mind that you are serious about change. It tells your future that you're coming for it. It tells your doubts that they no longer get to run your life. And as this process continues, you'll begin to feel something powerful rising inside you. You'll feel your self-respect growing, because you know you are making choices that protect your future. You'll feel your discipline expanding because you're proving you can handle urges without letting them define your actions. You'll feel your confidence strengthen because you're no longer reacting blindly. You're responding with intention. The pause is not weakness, it's maturity, it's wisdom, it's strength in its purest form. Anyone can react instantly. Anyone can follow the easiest path. But it takes a stronger person to stop and choose a better direction when the old one feels familiar. Your life changes when you take responsibility for those small seconds. Those seconds decide who you become. When you pause before reacting, you take your power back from old patterns and place it into your own hands. And once you do that, your habits no longer shape you, you shape them.
Chapter 5. Break the cycle by owning the truth about yourself. When you reach the point where you can no longer hide from your own reflection, something powerful begins inside you. You start seeing the small truths you avoided for years. You notice the excuses you repeated so often that they sounded real. You recognize the habits you protected, even though they drained your energy, your confidence, and your opportunities. This moment is uncomfortable, but it's also the doorway to real freedom. Nothing changes until you decide to stop lying to yourself about why you do what you do. When you choose to own your truth, the cycle that once felt unbreakable starts to lose its strength. Many people stay stuck because they build a story that shields them from responsibility. That story may sound gentle. It may sound reasonable. It may sound like something you've believed since childhood, but the story keeps you from growing. The habit grows stronger each time you blame your environment, your stress, your past, or your circumstances. And the saddest part is that you start believing you have no control. You forget that every habit you repeat has your name written on it. Owning the truth doesn't mean attacking yourself or feeling ashamed. It means facing the reality that you created patterns you can also uncreate. You can't break a cycle with a story that makes you a victim of your own behavior. The moment you say, "This is how I am," you lock the door on your progress. The moment you say, "I can't help it," you give the habit a free pass to run your life. The truth is simple. You may not have chosen where the habit began, but you are choosing every time you continue it, and that truth gives you your power back. It reminds you that you're not stuck because of the habit, you're stuck because you've been avoiding the responsibility that frees you. There comes a day when you must sit with yourself without distractions and ask the real questions. What am I doing that keeps me here? What am I pretending not to see? What am I afraid to admit? The answers are not always pretty. Sometimes the truth is that you've been choosing comfort over growth. Sometimes it's that you've been repeating behaviors that help you escape your emotions instead of facing them. Sometimes it's that you've been running from responsibilities that would force you to grow. But when you acknowledge these things honestly, you become stronger, not weaker. You finally see what has been holding you back, and you realize it wasn't the world, it was the story you kept telling yourself. The cycle stays alive because it feeds on denial. When you deny what the habit is doing to your life, you stay in the same place. You may notice the damage, but you explain it away. You tell yourself you'll stop soon, even though you know the word soon has no date attached to it. You tell yourself other people have it worse. You tell yourself you'll start fresh next week or next month. But every delay deepens the pattern. Every excuse strengthens the habit's roots. Owning the truth means removing the comfort that keeps you asleep. It means looking at your life without filters. Truth is not your enemy. Truth is the light that shows you where to step next. When you acknowledge the role you play in your habit, you finally see the levers you can pull to change it. You stop feeling powerless because you understand that your choices matter. You stop feeling lost because you see the path clearly, maybe for the first time in years. People only feel stuck when they believe the problem is outside of them. But when you accept that the cycle lives inside your choices, you unlock the ability to choose differently. The habit you struggle with may have started from pain, fear, confusion, or loneliness. You may have used it to handle stress during times you felt overwhelmed. You may have picked it up from the people around you. You may have developed it because you didn't know a better way to cope. These explanations are human, understandable, and real. But once the habit begins shaping your days, continuing it becomes your responsibility. It's not your fault that it began, but it is your job to break it. That truth doesn't shame you, it empowers you. When you own the truth about your actions, you stop giving the habit permission to define your identity. You stop introducing yourself to life as someone who is controlled by old patterns. You stop settling for the version of you that lives on autopilot. Instead, you start defining yourself by your willingness to change, your ability to grow, and your courage to face yourself honestly. That's the moment your confidence resurfaces. Not because you're perfect, but because you're finally being real with yourself. Owning the truth also means acknowledging how the habit has affected the people around you. Sometimes we forget that our habits don't just shape our inner world, they shape our relationships, our patience, our tone, our presence, and our level of attention. When you see how your behavior influences others, it becomes even clearer how important change is. You realize that breaking the cycle isn't only about improving your life, it's about protecting the people you care about. This understanding deepens your motivation because it connects your growth to something bigger than your own comfort. When you stop lying to yourself, you stop running. You face the mirror and say, "This is what I've been doing. This is where it led me. This is not where I want to stay." That simple honesty opens the door to change faster than any complicated strategy ever could. You can't improve what you refuse to acknowledge. You can't rewrite a story you aren't willing to read honestly. Once you accept the truth, you take back the pen and begin shaping your next chapter intentionally. Many people try to break a habit without this step. They use willpower for a week. They force themselves through routines. They push and push until the pressure becomes too heavy, and then they fall back into the same cycle because they never addressed the core issue, their relationship with the truth. Without honesty, change becomes temporary. Without honesty, discipline turns into exhaustion. But with honesty, everything becomes easier. Not because the habit disappears instantly, but because you know exactly what you're fighting and why. You don't grow by pretending. You grow by facing what needs to be faced. When you admit the truth, you remove the confusion that made your mind feel heavy. You remove the stories that kept you stuck. You remove the emotional weight of running from your own choices. Suddenly, the path forward feels clearer. You understand your triggers. You understand your weak spot. You understand the beliefs that kept you tied to the behavior. And once you understand these things, you can change them. Owning the truth also gives you a new level of self-respect. You are no longer hiding behind excuses. You are no longer living in a fog of denial. You are standing on solid ground, acknowledging your responsibility and choosing to rise above your past behavior. This is the beginning of real confidence. Confidence doesn't come from perfection. It comes from honesty. It comes from the courage to say, "I can do better, and I will." Breaking the cycle isn't about punishing yourself. It's about liberating yourself. It's about refusing to let old patterns control your future. It's about taking responsibility not because you're flawed, but because you're capable.
You show yourself that you're strong enough to face your weaknesses and disciplined enough to replace harmful habits with healthier ones. This shift in mindset becomes the foundation of lasting change. As you own your truth, you also start building a new identity. You see yourself as someone who is willing to grow, someone who is willing to confront hard realities, someone who is willing to make choices that support their future. The more honest you are, the more you rise above the behavior that once held you back. You begin to feel a new kind of strength, one that comes from clarity, not force. And once you've accepted the truth, something remarkable happens. The habit loses its power to define you. You stop seeing yourself as someone trapped in the cycle. You stop seeing the urge as something you must obey. You stop seeing the behavior as something permanent. Instead, you see it as something you are actively outgrowing. And that shift alone reduces the emotional grip the habit once had on you. When you carry truth inside you, you walk differently. You talk differently. You make decisions with a cleaner mind. You show up to your life with more intention. You understand why you're changing, not just how. You build your days on a foundation that no longer collapses under pressure. You see progress in places where there was once only frustration. And even when the habit tries to reappear, you're not intimidated, because you're no longer hiding from yourself. Breaking the cycle begins with that one step, choosing to be honest. Not the soft version of honesty that avoids discomfort, but the deep honesty that reveals what's really happening. Once you do that, you open the door to growth that doesn't fade. You free yourself from patterns that used to dictate your behavior. You give yourself permission to build a life based on clarity instead of denial. You become the kind of person who changes because they're awake, not because they're pressured, because they're aware, not because they're forced, and because they've accepted the truth, not because they're trying to escape from it. When you own the truth about yourself, the cycle breaks, not by accident, but by intention. And once it breaks, you don't just move forward. You run.
Chapter 6. Build a simple daily action that rewires your behavior. Every lasting change begins with something small you do every single day, something so clear and simple that your mind doesn't fight it. People often wait for the perfect moment to reinvent themselves, but growth does not come from waiting. It comes from the daily actions that slowly reshape how you think, how you decide, and how you respond. A habit does not disappear because you hope it will. It fades because you build new actions that take its place. Actions you repeat until they become a natural part of who you are. When you build one simple action into your day, you give your mind a new direction. You stop drifting back into the old pattern and start moving towards something better. There is a truth people forget. Your mind adapts to what you do often. If you repeat the same behavior every day, even if it works against you, your mind will support it because it feels familiar. That is why breaking a habit feels hard. You're not just changing what you do, you're changing what your mind expects. It takes intention to guide your mind in a new direction, and the best way to do that is by using one clear action that you can perform without pressure. A simple action cuts through confusion. It pushes you forward when motivation fades. It becomes the anchor that helps your mind learn a new path. Many people choose actions that are too big. They try to change their entire life in one day, and the weight of it becomes overwhelming. They promise themselves huge transformations, but the pressure drains their energy before they even begin. What works is the opposite. Choose something small, something steady, something that fits into your day even when life gets busy or stressful. A simple action might not feel impressive, but it's powerful because you can stay consistent with it. Your mind learns from repetition, not intensity. When you give your mind something small and repeatable, you build progress without burning out. Your daily action should not feel forced. It should bring clarity, not tension. It should feel like a reminder of who you want to become, a step you take because you value your future more than your excuses. When your action is simple, it becomes possible to perform it even on days when your motivation is low. People fail not because they lack willpower, but because they rely on willpower to carry heavy tasks every day. A small action frees you from that burden. It allows you to move forward regardless of your mood. Choosing the right action starts with understanding the behavior you want to replace. Every habit fills some kind of space in your life. It brings relief, distraction, comfort, or escape. Whatever you choose as your new action must give your mind something better to focus on. It doesn't need to be complicated, it only needs to give your mind a new rhythm. For some people, the action might be writing down one thought that helps them stay aware. For others, it might be stepping away from a trigger for 1 minute before reacting. It could be drinking water before reaching for something unhealthy. It could be taking 5 deep breaths before responding to stress. It could be reading a short message that reminds you of your goal. The key is not the size of the action, the key is that you perform it every day without fail. Your daily action becomes a signal to your mind. It says, we're going in a new direction. Over time, your mind begins to expect the action. It starts adjusting your thoughts to support it. It starts moving away from the old habit because the new action is becoming more familiar. This is how rewiring happens. Not through pressure, not through guilt, through repetition, through clarity, through a choice that becomes part of your identity. You will notice something beautiful once you start repeating your action. Your confidence slowly returns, you begin to trust yourself again. You feel a new sense of control because you're doing something that moves you closer to the life you want. This confidence makes the old habit less appealing. You no longer see yourself as someone who gives in easily. You see yourself as someone who makes intentional decisions. The simple action becomes more than a task. It becomes evidence of your commitment to yourself. There will be days when the old habit tries to pull you back. Your mind may remind you of the comfort you used to feel. It may try to convince you that one small slip will not matter. This is where your daily action protects you. When the urge shows up, the action gives you something healthier to do instead. It interrupts the pattern. It weakens the old cycle. It gives you a moment to make a choice that supports your future instead of your old behaviors. A simple action can stop a full relapse because it gives your mind something solid to hold on to when your emotions become loud. When you repeat your action long enough, it starts influencing other parts of your life. You might notice you're more patient, you're more aware, you're more intentional with your time. This happens because the action didn't just change your behavior, it changed how your mind processes situations. You begin catching yourself before falling into old patterns. You start choosing differently without even thinking about it. The internal wiring shifts because your daily action taught your mind a new way to operate. You may not see dramatic results instantly, but change is happening even when you don't feel it. Small actions create momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds consistency, and consistency rewires the mind. Each day you repeat your action. You strengthen the new pathway. You strengthen your identity as someone who grows. You weaken the belief that the habit controls you. The transformation becomes visible later, but it begins the moment you commit to the action. As you continue with your daily action, you'll see how it shapes your emotional world. The old habit may have been your response to stress, boredom, frustration, or fear. When you choose a healthy action instead, your emotions begin to settle. You start coping in ways that support you rather than harm you. You learn how to stay centered even when life gets difficult. You create a new form of balance inside yourself. You handle challenges with more clarity
because your mind has learned a new pattern. The action becomes a tool you can rely on, not just for breaking the habit, but for shaping a stronger mindset. There is something else that happens as you stay consistent. You feel proud, not the loud kind of pride that needs attention, but the quiet kind that gives you strength. You begin to enjoy being someone who shows up for themselves. You feel lighter because you're no longer fighting yourself every day. You feel more hopeful because you see that change is not as impossible as you once believed. When you build daily actions, you remove the struggle of starting over again and again. You replace frustration with progress you can feel. A simple daily action is not just a tool, it becomes a symbol of your commitment to grow. Each day that you complete it, you remind yourself that your future matters. You remind yourself that you don't need to wait for motivation to do the right thing. You remind yourself that small steps can shift your entire life if you take them serious. Some people may not understand why you focus on something so small. They may expect dramatic efforts and big gestures. But you know what they don't. Change happens through consistency, not intensity. A small action holds more power than a large one you cannot maintain. When you perform your action each day, you are training your mind the same way you would train a muscle. You build strength through steady repetition. You build discipline through showing up even when the day feels heavy. You build a new identity through thousands of tiny steps that most people never see. Your simple action becomes a daily reminder that growth is not a distant dream. It is something you create with your choices. The more you repeat it, the more deeply it becomes part of you. You wake up with a sense of direction. You go through your day with more awareness. You end your night knowing you didn't give your habit the control it once had. This is how real change feels. Steady, grounded, and honest. When you look back months later, you'll see how much you've transformed. The habit that felt permanent will seem smaller. The urges that felt powerful will seem weaker. The identity that once held you back will have faded. All because you built one simple daily action that rewired your behavior and reshaped your life. And this is the beauty of personal growth. You don't need dramatic breakthroughs. You need small daily steps that become part of your identity. You need actions that align with the person you want to become. When you build them into your life, you create a future that reflects your strength instead of your old patterns. You rise not because of what you do once, but because of what you choose to do every single day.
Chapter 7. Stop feeding the emotion that keeps your habit alive. Breaking a bad habit begins with understanding how deeply emotions influence the choices made every single day, and how easily the mind can get trapped in patterns that feel familiar but keep one stuck in the same place. Every habit, no matter how small, is supported by a feeling, a trigger that convinces the brain that repeating the same behavior will provide relief, pleasure, or safety. People often think they fail because they lack willpower, but the truth is that the emotion behind the habit is far stronger than any fleeting attempt to resist it. That feeling, whether it is boredom, stress, loneliness, or frustration, has been trained to respond to the old behavior, and until that underlying feeling is addressed, breaking the habit will feel like fighting against a wave that always crashes back. The first step is noticing the emotion in real time, paying attention when it rises and acknowledging it without judgment. Recognition itself is a form of power because most people live on autopilot, unaware of why they are reaching for that habit, leaving the mind controlled by old impulses. When a craving, an urge, or the familiar thought that leads to the habit appears, pause and ask, what am I really feeling right now? What am I trying to escape or soothe? The answer may be discomfort, tension, or anxiety. Naming that emotion takes away part of its control and makes it tangible instead of invisible. Once it is visible, it becomes something that can be addressed in ways that do not feed the habit. After identifying the emotion, the next step is to decide not to feed it with the old habit. This is a moment that requires honesty and courage. The impulse may feel overwhelming, yet it is not the enemy, it is information. It tells exactly what the mind has been trying to fix, but the habit itself is the outdated method that no longer serves growth. Instead of letting the old behavior dictate action, replace it with a deliberate response that addresses the feeling in a healthier way. For example, if the habit is eating sugar whenever stressed, the underlying emotion is stress. Responding by eating a cookie will give temporary relief, but reinforce the pattern. Instead, the stress can be addressed by taking a walk, calling a friend, journaling, or performing a focused breathing exercise. Doing something that satisfies the emotion without giving in to the habit starts retraining the brain. The brain learns through repeated experience that the old behavior is not the only way to respond, and over time, the emotional intensity linked to the habit diminishes because the brain discovers new ways to respond. It is essential to observe the triggers that amplify the emotion. These triggers may be environmental, social, or internal. Perhaps a specific time of day, a certain person, or a recurring thought sparks the emotional response. Pay attention to the situations where the habit emerges. Awareness of the trigger allows planning and intervention before the behavior begins. People underestimate the power of small preventive actions, yet they are often the difference between repeating a habit and taking a new path. Changing the environment, limiting exposure to the trigger, or creating a simple ritual that interrupts the habitual flow can be incredibly effective. The key is not to avoid life, but to create space for conscious choice. While addressing the immediate emotion is crucial, it is also necessary to understand the patterns of thinking that keep the emotion alive. Often people replay stories in their minds that amplify fear, resentment, or dissatisfaction. These thoughts fuel the emotional energy that feeds the habit. By observing these patterns, a person can identify the narrative they tell themselves and decide whether it is useful or damaging. For example, thinking "I always fail" or "I cannot control myself" strengthens the emotional intensity that demands relief through the habit. Shifting this narrative to acknowledge effort, growth, and choice reduces the power of the feeling behind the habit. This does not mean forcing false positivity, but facing reality with clarity, owning responsibility, and recognizing the ability to respond differently. Thoughts and emotions are connected. When one changes the pattern of thought, the habit loses part of its grip. Practical exercises can reinforce this process. Begin by creating a log that records the emotion each time the urge for the habit appears. Note the intensity of the feeling, the trigger, and the response. Over days and weeks, patterns will emerge that provide insight into the emotional landscape that drives behavior. This awareness is liberating because it brings unconscious processes into the light. With clarity comes choice. Next, experiment with immediate alternative actions that honor the feeling without giving in to the habit. This may include physical activity, creative work, meditation, or reaching out to someone supportive. The goal is not to suppress the emotion, but to respond in a way that builds resilience and self-control. Each successful response weakens the old habit loop and strengthens a new pattern that supports growth. Consistency is the most critical factor. Emotional responses and habits are deeply ingrained because they have been reinforced over time. Changing them will not happen in a day or even a week. It is a gradual process that demands patience, self-compassion, and vigilance. Every time the habit is resisted and the emotion is addressed in a healthier way, neural pathways in the brain begin to reorganize. The mind learns new associations and strengthens the belief that one can handle the feeling without resorting to old behavior. Over time, the emotion becomes manageable and the habit loses its power. Celebrate progress, not by perfection, but by continued commitment to choosing differently in the moment.
It is also important to manage expectations and avoid harsh self-criticism. Breaking a habit can feel like facing an opponent who has been undefeated for years, but the opponent is only as strong as the energy fed to it. There will be times when the habit returns, and moments when emotions feel too strong. These moments are opportunities to observe without judgment, to understand the triggers and responses more clearly, and to strengthen strategies for the next time. Every effort contributes to long-term change. Resilience grows each time the habit is faced without surrender. Emotional mastery is not about eliminating feeling, but about not letting feelings dictate unhelpful actions. Support systems amplify the process. Sharing progress with someone trustworthy, receiving encouragement, or simply having a witness for the journey can increase accountability and motivation. Knowing that someone else recognizes the struggle and celebrates victories creates emotional reinforcement that strengthens resolve. It is a reminder that human connection supports behavioral change and that personal growth does not have to be a solitary path. Finally, reflection completes the loop. Regularly review moments when the habit was resisted successfully and when it was not. Ask honest questions. What emotion appeared? How did I respond? What can I do differently next time? Reflection creates insight, and insight creates strategy. This process transforms the experience from random struggle into deliberate mastery. By addressing the emotion behind the habit directly and consciously choosing responses, the habit loses the automatic power it once had. Gradually, life becomes freer, more intentional, and aligned with personal goals. Stopping the feed to the emotion that keeps a habit alive is both a practical and profound approach. It requires attention, honesty, consistent action, and a willingness to face uncomfortable feelings without defaulting to the familiar behavior. Over time, the mind learns that it can navigate emotional intensity without crutches, the heart experiences confidence in decision-making, and the body adjusts to new patterns that reflect self-respect and deliberate living. Freedom from a habit emerges not as a result of sheer willpower, but as a natural consequence of understanding, observing, and choosing to meet the emotional demand in a healthy and constructive way. Each conscious choice builds resilience, strengthens character, and deepens the sense of personal agency. Life becomes an ongoing practice of facing feelings, making decisions with awareness, and creating the behavior that leads toward growth, rather than the pattern that keeps one stuck. Every moment the emotion is noticed and not fed by the habit is a victory. Every conscious response strengthens the neural pathways of self-control. Every day spent observing, adjusting, and acting with intention reshapes the mind, rewires the brain, and ultimately frees life from the habit that once felt unshakable. This approach transforms not only the behavior, but the inner sense of self. People who master this process report not only a reduction in the habit, but an increase in confidence, emotional stability, and life satisfaction. The practice requires patience, vigilance, and unwavering commitment to face what is felt and respond with wisdom. Over time, the reward is profound, a life no longer controlled by a repeated behavior, but led by conscious choice and emotional awareness.
Chapter 8. Strengthen your self-control by challenging one urge daily. Building self-control is not about force or punishment. It is about deliberate practice and understanding how small, consistent actions create massive change over time. The mind responds to challenge not by avoiding discomfort but by learning through repeated experience that it can handle tension, delay gratification, and make choices aligned with long-term goals. Every urge that erases it an opportunity, a signal that a moment of growth is available. People often underestimate the value of confronting even a single urge deliberately each day. One conscious act of resistance strengthens the mental muscles that govern choice and diminishes the automatic power of the habit. Self-control is not a single event, it is a muscle that grows when exercised consistently, much like lifting weights in the gym. Each time a person chooses to face an urge and redirect energy towards something productive, the neural pathways in the brain begin to rewire, creating stronger connections that favor intentional action over impulsive behavior. It begins with awareness. Recognizing the moment when an urge arises is the critical first step. People are often blindsided by habits because they fail to notice the initial impulse. Training the mind to catch that first flicker of desire allows action to occur before the habitual response takes over. Pause, observe the sensation, name it, and understand what it is signaling. Is it hunger, boredom, anxiety, stress, or a craving for comfort? Once identified, the urge loses some of its invisible control. Awareness itself is empowering because it turns what feels automatic into a conscious choice point. Next, create a small, manageable challenge to confront the urge. The goal is not to overwhelm, but to stretch capability incrementally. For example, if the habit is checking social media compulsively, commit to delaying the first scroll by 5 minutes each day. If the habit is snacking when stressed, try substituting one healthy action, like taking a brief walk, sipping water, or doing deep breathing. These challenges must be simple, achievable, and repeatable. Consistency matters far more than intensity. Success in small tasks builds momentum, and momentum strengthens confidence. Each completed challenge reinforces the belief that self-control is possible, that the brain can be trained, and that urges do not need to dominate behavior. The key is persistence in the face of resistance. The first few days may feel difficult because the brain instinctively seeks familiar relief. Urges may return stronger at times, but each act of deliberate resistance weakens the automatic response. Habits are reinforced by repetition, and the same principle works for self-control. Repeated acts of choosing differently strengthen willpower over time. Do not fear discomfort. It is the signal that growth is occurring. Facing one urge daily is training in real-life conditions, exposing the mind to the tension it has always avoided. The more exposure, the greater the resilience. Tracking progress is an effective strategy. Recording each urge confronted, noting how it felt, what action was taken, and the outcome provides feedback that builds insight and motivation. Over time, patterns emerge that reveal triggers, strengths, and areas that need more attention. Documentation is not just about accountability. It is a mirror that shows how small, consistent choices compound into noticeable change. Reviewing these logs reinforces belief in the ability to act with intention and reminds the mind that challenges are temporary and conquerable. It is also essential to celebrate wins, no matter how small. Each urge resisted is a victory that strengthens self-trust. Recognize the effort rather than just the outcome. The sense of accomplishment fuels further action and builds a positive feedback loop. Often people focus on failures and miss the accumulation of small victories that quietly reshape behavior. Self-control grows in layers, and every moment of conscious choice adds another layer to mental resilience. The brain begins to anticipate success and gradually expects the individual to handle urges with composure rather than succumb automatically. Challenging one urge daily also cultivates patience. Many people believe change should be immediate, yet true transformation occurs slowly through repeated practice and experience. Patience allows for observation, learning, and adjustment without harsh judgment. Sometimes an urge may feel overpowering and resisting it may not be perfect, but even partial success counts towards strengthening self-control. The process is cumulative. Each effort contributes to a trajectory of growth that eventually changes not just a single habit, but the broader capacity to choose wisely in all areas of life. It is important to recognize the emotional component of urges. They are rarely purely physical. They are tied to feelings, desires, and mental narratives.
Confronting the urge is also confronting the emotion behind it. People often feed habits to numb or escape discomfort. Choosing to face the urge daily trains the mind to tolerate emotions without seeking immediate relief in old patterns. This practice builds emotional resilience alongside behavioral control. Over time, the intensity of urges diminishes because the mind learns it can survive and thrive without surrendering to temporary impulses. Emotional strength and self-control grow hand in hand. Setting up supportive structures enhances success. Create reminders, cues, or signals that prompt awareness and action when an urge arises. Environment shapes behavior. Remove easy access to triggers or create physical or mental pauses that allow the conscious mind to step in. Share the practice with a trusted individual if accountability helps, or simply establish personal rituals that reinforce the commitment to challenge urges. These systems make the process smoother and increase the likelihood of consistent success. The environment can either fuel old habits or support new patterns, and arranging it intentionally makes challenging urges easier to manage. Finally, reflect daily on the experience. Each evening, review the urges faced, the choices made, and the feeling experienced. Ask honest questions. What worked? What was difficult? How can tomorrow be approached differently? Reflection deepens insight, enhances learning, and strengthens decision-making in future moments. This process transforms random struggle into structured growth. Every deliberate choice against an urge strengthens mental discipline, reinforces belief in personal agency, and reshapes the brain's response to temptation. Over time, the cumulative effect is profound. One daily challenge becomes a habit of choice itself. The mind begins to expect conscious action, and the old patterns lose their grip. People notice increased confidence, reduced impulsivity, and a sense of mastery over behavior. Self-control is no longer a temporary effort, but becomes integrated into daily life. The practice of facing one urge daily nurtures a sense of personal power and freedom from the automatic chains of habit. It teaches that no impulse is stronger than the mind committed to awareness and intentional action. The process requires commitment, honesty, and patience. Confronting urges is uncomfortable, yet it is exactly this discomfort that forges resilience. Avoiding the challenge only strengthens old habits, while facing it with deliberate action weakens their control. Small victories compound over time, shaping identity, mindset, and life choices. This practice transforms ordinary moments into opportunities for growth and builds a foundation for sustained personal development. Life becomes less reactive and more intentional. Challenging one urge daily is not about perfection, but about presence and action. It is about recognizing impulses, observing them, and responding with conscious choice. Each act reinforces the understanding that self-control is a skill, a trainable capacity that grows with consistent attention. Over weeks and months, the cumulative effect of small daily challenges leads to profound change. Habits that once felt automatic become manageable. Emotional strength and mental clarity expand. Confidence in decision-making strengthens. The person becomes someone who acts with intention rather than reacts unconsciously. The ultimate lesson is that every urge is a moment of opportunity. Each confrontation builds the skill of self-control, expands awareness, and reshapes identity. The brain, once accustomed to surrendering automatically to old habits, learns to pause, evaluate, and choose. Over time, these repeated moments transform behavior, character, and life trajectory. Mastery of one urge at a time leads to mastery of self and a greater capacity to live intentionally, freely, and aligned with true goals. The discipline cultivated through daily challenges is a cornerstone of breaking any habit and building the life desired.
Chapter 9. Shift your focus from quick relief to long-term growth. Breaking free from habits that demand quick satisfaction begins with understanding the real cost of short-term relief. People often pursue habits because they promise instant comfort, a momentary lift, or an escape from discomfort, but these fleeting gratifications rarely serve long-term goals. Every time the mind chooses immediate pleasure over deliberate action, it strengthens patterns that pull away from growth, productivity, and fulfillment. Shifting focus requires conscious awareness of the difference between temporary comfort and meaningful progress. The first step is noticing the urge for quick relief and asking what it is costing in terms of time, energy, and opportunity. Recognizing that every habit has consequences, visible or invisible, allows the mind to evaluate options rather than react automatically. The next step is to define long-term growth clearly. What does it mean for life, career, relationships, and self-esteem? People are often too vague about their goals, which makes short-term relief feel more attractive. Being specific about what growth looks like creates a tangible target that motivates choices. For instance, instead of saying, "I want to be healthier," clarify the goal. "I want to build energy to play with my children, improve stamina, and prevent health problems." The more vivid and personal the vision, the easier it becomes to compare immediate urges against long-term benefits. Long-term thinking creates a framework where each decision can be measured by whether it aligns with the person one wants to become. Once clarity is established, create a deliberate pause whenever a habit surfaces. This pause is an opportunity to ask, will this choice serve my long-term growth or only provide temporary relief? The mind needs practice to resist old reflexes, so each pause is a moment of training. During this pause, visualize the benefits of choosing growth over comfort. Picture the future self experiencing the results of consistent effort. Imagine how life will feel when habits no longer control decisions. Emotional engagement with long-term outcomes makes them compelling and tangible, which strengthens motivation to act differently in the present. Replacing short-term relief with constructive alternatives is essential. When an urge arises, deliberately choose an action that nurtures growth, even if it does not provide instant comfort. For example, if the habit is scrolling endlessly on a phone when stressed, instead choose reading a chapter of a personal development book, exercising, or writing down thoughts. If the habit is consuming unhealthy food for comfort, prepare a nutritious meal, go for a walk, or engage in a hobby. These actions do not just suppress the old habit, they actively reinforce patterns that support growth. The key is repetition. Consistent replacement builds new neural pathways, and over time the brain begins to crave the reward of productive action instead of immediate relief. It is also important to analyze triggers that lead to seeking quick relief. Often these triggers are subtle: stress, fatigue, social pressure, or negative thoughts. Identifying them allows preparation and intervention before the habit takes hold. People who take control of triggers notice that many urges are predictable and manageable. For instance, if work stress triggers snacking, pre-plan a healthier response, such as a walk, breathing exercises, or a brief conversation with someone supportive. Anticipating and responding to triggers reinforces a sense of agency and reduces the automatic pull of habit. Understanding the emotional dimension of instant gratification is critical. Quick relief is rarely just about desire, it is about escaping discomfort, avoiding tension, or calming anxiety. Long-term growth requires tolerance of these emotions without relying on the habit to mask them. By observing discomfort without reacting impulsively, the mind develops resilience. Each instance of resisting the immediate urge while tolerating temporary tension strengthens self-control and confidence. Emotional strength grows alongside behavioral change, reinforcing the shift from seeking relief to choosing growth. Tracking progress solidifies the transformation. Keep a daily record of moments when the urge for quick relief arose, what choice was made, and the impact on long-term goals. Over time, patterns will emerge, showing how short-term impulses were managed and how long-term benefits accumulated. Documentation is motivating because it provides visible proof of effort and progress, reinforcing the belief that sustained attention to growth produces tangible results. Reflection also identifies areas that need adjustment, creating a feedback loop that accelerates development. Mindset plays a crucial role. Developing patience and perspective helps reduce the temptation of immediate satisfaction. Remind yourself that enduring temporary discomfort leads to lasting fulfillment. People often underestimate the power of delayed reward because the present feels urgent, but consciously valuing future benefits strengthens the ability to choose wisely. Cultivate a mindset that sees discomfort as training rather than punishment. Each moment of resisting the pull of instant relief is an investment in freedom, skill, and personal capacity. Over time, this perspective shifts behavior from reactive to deliberate, transforming life choices across multiple areas. Support networks enhance the process. Sharing goals, progress, and challenges with trusted friends, mentors, or communities creates accountability and encouragement. Others can help reinforce the value of long-term growth over fleeting pleasure and celebrate victories that may feel small individually but are significant cumulative. Social reinforcement strengthens internal motivation, and knowing that someone else recognizes effort can provide the extra push when the mind resists change. Human connection acts as a catalyst, helping sustain focus on meaningful outcomes rather than temporary gratification. Creating structured routines supports the shift from instant relief to long-term growth. Establishing habits, schedules, and rituals that reinforce productive behavior reduces reliance on willpower alone. When routines consistently align with long-term goals, the mind begins to anticipate growth-oriented actions rather than defaulting to old habits. For instance, regular exercise, planned reading, mindful breaks, and intentional nutrition create a life where positive choices are automatic and habitual, reducing the need to resist impulses in the moment. Consistency creates a foundation that supports both physical and mental resilience. It is also valuable to reframe perception of reward. Long-term growth is often subtle and cumulative, unlike immediate pleasure that provides visible instantaneous feedback. Learning to recognize and appreciate incremental gains, such as improved focus, increased energy, or enhanced mood, reinforces the behavior. Celebrate small milestones and acknowledge the effort invested in choosing growth over comfort. This reinforces intrinsic motivation and builds the belief that every conscious choice contributes meaningfully to progress. Reflection and self-inquiry deepen understanding. Regularly ask, which habits provide temporary comfort at the expense of growth? Which choices have aligned with my long-term vision? What emotions drive the urge for instant relief? Honest answers create awareness, inform strategy, and guide daily action. Reflection converts random struggle into informed and deliberate decision-making. Growth becomes measurable, intentional, and personally meaningful, creating a sense of control and direction. Over time, shifting focus from quick relief to long-term growth transforms not only behavior but also identity. The person becomes someone who makes decisions with awareness, tolerates discomfort without surrendering to impulse, and prioritizes meaningful outcomes over temporary pleasure. Confidence, resilience, and clarity increase because life becomes intentional rather than reactive. The brain, once trained to seek immediate reward, learns that true satisfaction comes from cumulative progress, self-discipline, and alignment with values. Habits of instant gratification diminish as habits of growth strengthen. Every moment the choice is made to prioritize growth reinforces the message that life is directed by conscious action rather than reflexive behavior. Each instance of resisting an easy escape builds patience, determination, and emotional stability. The process is cumulative, and over weeks and months,
It produces profound transformation in mindset, behavior, and life outcomes. Long-term thinking becomes a default lens through which all decisions are evaluated, reducing the sway of fleeting temptation. Ultimately, this approach is not about perfection, but about deliberate action. Every time a person chooses growth over relief, the mind learns to trust itself, the heart gains confidence, and the body reinforces new patterns of behavior. Habits that once seemed necessary for comfort lose their grip, replaced by intentional actions that support well-being, achievement, and fulfillment. The practice of consistently valuing long-term results over immediate satisfaction builds mastery, personal power, and resilience that extend beyond any single habit. Shifting focus is a daily, moment-by-moment exercise. It requires awareness, intentionality, and the courage to face discomfort without giving in to habitual relief. Each choice reinforces neural pathways, strengthens character, and expands capacity for self-regulation. Over time, the habit of seeking instant comfort is replaced by the habit of investing in growth, producing a life that is purposeful, resilient, and aligned with one's highest goal. Every decision to prioritize growth shapes identity, increases freedom, and deepens the satisfaction derived from life itself.
Chapter 10. Commit to yourself fully, even when the habit feels strong. Committing fully to yourself is the ultimate step in breaking a habit, because it is the moment when choice becomes non-negotiable, when the mind and heart align toward personal growth, regardless of temporary discomfort. Habits, by their nature, feel strong because they have been reinforced over time, but strength is not the same as inevitability. No impulse, craving, or mental reflex has the power to dictate life when there is a clear, unwavering commitment to self. This commitment is rooted in recognizing that personal growth, dignity, and fulfillment matter more than any momentary urge. It is about deciding that the life you want, the character you aspire to, and the person you are becoming are worth every ounce of effort, every moment of struggle, and every choice to resist old patterns. The first aspect of committing fully is clarity. Understand exactly why breaking this habit matters to you personally. It is not enough to know that the habit is bad or unhealthy. Ask what it prevents you from achieving, what it costs in energy, focus, and opportunities, and how life will improve when it no longer dominates behavior. Write it down, speak it aloud, internalize it. The clarity of purpose creates a foundation that is unshakable even when the habit feels intense. People often falter because their commitment is abstract or weak. Strong commitment is explicit, personal, and emotionally anchored. Next, prepare to face the intensity of the habit head-on. It will feel strong because the mind and body have been conditioned over months or years to respond automatically. This is not a sign of failure. It is a natural part of the process. Anticipate that urges will return and sometimes feel overwhelming. Expect discomfort. Accept that resisting these moments is where transformation occurs. Every time the habit feels powerful and you still act in alignment with your commitment, you reinforce not only new behaviors, but also belief in your own capability. Strength is built through action, not avoidance. Building daily rituals reinforces commitment. Habits are reinforced through repetition, so deliberately creating routines that align with growth strengthens the foundation of your choice. Simple actions taken consistently are more powerful than dramatic efforts that cannot be sustained. Morning routines, exercise, focused work periods, journaling, or mindful breathing sessions all contribute to reinforcing a sense of self-discipline. These rituals become visible proof of commitment and create momentum that carries through moments when impulses surge. Each repeated action is a statement to yourself. You are serious about your growth and unwilling to let old patterns dominate. It is critical to maintain a mindset of responsibility and ownership. Avoid blaming external circumstances, stress, or fatigue for lapses or temptation. The habit may feel strong, but you have control over your response. Every moment provides an opportunity to exercise agency. Taking responsibility does not mean harsh self-criticism. It means seeing clearly where power lies and exercising it consistently. Ownership strengthens resolve because it places authority over life squarely in your hands, rather than in the hands of habits or fleeting impulses. Accountability enhances commitment. Share intentions with someone you trust or create systems that track progress and reinforce responsibility. This external acknowledgement amplifies internal resolve. Knowing that effort is witnessed or recorded adds weight to the commitment, making it less likely to be ignored. Support is not a crutch, it is reinforcement for the choices already being made. Consciously observing patterns, discussing challenges, and celebrating victories helps solidify the decision to stay committed even when the habit appears strongest. Mindfulness and self-awareness are vital tools in this stage. The stronger a habit feels, the more the mind may try to rationalize giving in. Observe thoughts without judgment. Notice how cravings arise, peak and pass. Recognize that the intensity is temporary and will diminish when not fed. By observing rather than reacting, the mind learns that impulses do not demand surrender. Each instance of conscious awareness paired with deliberate action strengthens the neural pathways associated with self-control and personal agency. It is essential to plan responses for moments of vulnerability. Identify situations, triggers or emotions that intensify the habit and decide in advance how to respond. When the urge comes, act immediately according to the plan. This prevents hesitation, excuses or rationalization from undermining commitment. Prepared responses build confidence and reduce the perceived power of the habit. Over time, anticipation and strategy replace fear and reactive behavior, creating a sense of mastery even in challenging moments. Resilience grows through small repeated victories. Each decision to stay committed, even when the habit feels overwhelming, strengthens not only behavior, but also self-belief. Do not underestimate the compound effect of these moments. The brain internalizes repeated success, creating a foundation where resisting old impulses becomes easier. Over time, the habit loses its grip, not because the desire disappears immediately, but because consistent action builds identity and expectation around choice and self-discipline. Identity shifts from being someone controlled by impulses to being someone who acts intentionally, and consistent emotional regulation supports sustained commitment. Strong habits are often tied to emotions such as anxiety, boredom, or frustration. Strengthening the ability to face these feelings without immediate relief is critical. Practices such as deep breathing, reflection, journaling, or brief physical activity can help regulate emotional intensity, allowing rational, deliberate action to guide behavior. Learning to tolerate discomfort without surrendering to old patterns reinforces the commitment to self and builds mental toughness. Celebrating progress reinforces the mind's alignment with personal goals. Each successful resistance, no matter how small, is a victory that strengthens resolve. Recognition of effort rather than perfection nurtures motivation and reinforces identity as someone who honors commitments. Reflect on how each choice contributes to long-term growth and how it shapes the person you are becoming. These reflections deepen emotional investment in commitment, making it easier to persist through challenges. It is equally important to maintain flexibility in approach without compromising the commitment itself. Strategies may need adjustment, routines may shift, and circumstances may change. Flexibility ensures sustainability and prevents discouragement. Commitment is about persistence, not rigidity. By adapting methods while holding firm to the underlying purpose, progress continues even when conditions are less than ideal. This balance of steadiness and adaptability strengthens the ability to act intentionally under varying circumstances. The habit that once felt insurmountable loses its dominance, and the mind internalizes the ability to act in alignment with long-term goals.
Life becomes increasingly defined by conscious choice rather than reflexive response. Personal agency grows, and the sense of freedom from the habit deepens. The individual becomes someone capable of enduring tension, making deliberate decisions, and honoring promises made to oneself. Regular reflection ensures continued alignment with personal values and goals. Ask questions such as, how did I respond to challenges today? Where did I maintain commitment? Where can I strengthen focus? Honest reflection reinforces learning, reveals patterns, and allows continuous improvement. Commitment is not static, it is an active process that requires attention, evaluation, and adaptation. The more one reflects on actions and their alignment with goals, the stronger the sense of ownership and intentionality becomes. Every moment of choosing self-commitment over the pull of the habit strengthens character. Each decision signals to the brain that intentional action matters more than automatic comfort. With time, the repeated act of commitment transforms not just behavior, but identity. The person begins to expect and honor their own decisions, building confidence and self-respect. Habits no longer define life. Deliberate choice and alignment with personal vision define existence. Finally, full commitment requires unwavering patience and persistence. There will be difficult moments when the habit feels stronger than ever, but perseverance through these moments builds resilience, mastery, and a lasting sense of personal power. Each decision to honor oneself adds weight to the internal authority that shapes behavior. Life becomes less about reaction and more about conscious action, and freedom from habit becomes not a distant goal, but a lived experience. The ability to commit fully even in the face of strong urges creates a foundation for growth, fulfillment, and the development of a life led by intention rather than impulse.